the real reason why wide receivers are making massive contracts in 2024. Hey man, what it is, what it ain't, you already know, man. I'm back with another video. We're gonna jump straight into it today, okay? And it is why NFL wide receivers are making massive lucrative deals in the year 2024. So in 2024, you have multiple receivers making lucrative deals here. With A.J. Brown at $32 million a year, you have Amara St. Brown at $30 million a year, you have Tyreek Hill at $30 million a year, you have Tay Adams at $28 million a year, you have Cooper Kupp at $26 million a year, and then also another recent deal in Devontae Smith making $25 million a year. With Justin Jefferson's contract coming up, and he is expecting, with reports saying that he is making somewhere in the ballpark of $30 to $40 million annually. Okay, now that is freaking amazing. That is the bag. That is 6 to 7 guys right there about to be, in their super bag, and all these contracts are within the last 2 to 3 seasons. And that is because of the wide receiver position has now become one of the most important positions on a football team. Now, at one point in time, it was looked at as, a diva was playing receiver and not necessarily a football player. Well, now for you to be a competent team, you have to have a great receiver and quarterback, really a duo, maybe even a trio there. Now, I will touch back on that later in this video, but here are a couple rules and a couple ways that the NFL is called to accelerate the growth of the receiver position. And this really just goes for all offensive players, but the banning of the hip drop tackle. Now, that is going to be a pivotal rule that we see here in 2024 get implemented, right? So that is going to be, a massive thing here in the realm of tackling, especially in the secondary, whenever sometimes you are trailing a guy so much that all you can do is a hip drop tackle. So definitely that is going to, help the offensive guys out way more than is helping the defensive guys, okay? Also, the one-sidedness cause of leading with your head, putting the head down and making contact, because running backs do this time and time again, right? And I know we're talking about receivers here, but this does help them in the fact that no safety or corner or linebacker or whoever can hit you with their head down like this. It is immediately targeting, stuff like that. It is immediately getting thrown out. It is immediately a penalty, is what I'm saying here, right? And the fact that you see running backs come through a hole like this. The fact that sometimes you will even see a receiver, if it's a crowded area, like on a receiver screen or something, run through contact like this. Now, all I am saying here is just that this call is very one-sided. Now, it is supposed to be on both sides of the ball that if you're leading with your head to cause contact, that's the first thing that makes contact, that is supposed to be a penalty regardless. And it is rarely ever called on the offensive player, but always called, sometimes even whenever it is not leading with the head, it is called with a defensive player here, right? And then the third thing, when I'm talking about tackling, is just that hard hits. You don't see hard hits anymore. You can't. A hard hit is unnecessary roughness, unsportsmanlike conduct. I mean, there is something that is going to be called here to mitigate a hard hit, because we want to see, well, not we, but the offensive, the NFL, I should say, wants to see the offensive player excel and not be banged up all the time, right? And, I grew up, in an era where receivers could not come across the middle of the field with the ribs exposed like this, or they're getting killed. Well, nowadays, it's hooray, right? You actually draft some receivers to dominate in the middle of the field rather than a tight end or a big body guy, right? And it's just that Hard hits are no longer in the game of the NFL to where you see guys, getting depleted and stuff like that, which has always been a penalty. But what I am just saying here is that you will never see another big hit highlight tape on a guy because it is just not, monetized in the NFL these days. The next rule change, or just the way that something is called in the NFL now, is the pass interference call. Okay, the defensive pass interference call, I should say, because we all know OPI, as in offensive pass interference, is rarely ever called in the NFL, even though it happens a lot. On most jump balls, there's OPI there. It's a push off or something like that. It just is, but it is, right? And that barely ever gets called. But now it is like almost a routine for, if it's a 50-50 ball, the quarterback throws it short and let the receiver run into the DB, and it's an automatic PI call, right? 25 yards down the field or something like that. Just simply because the quarterback underthrew him. That to me, that is terrible calling. That is terrible officiating. When the corner is playing such great defense, or the safety, what have you, or a linebacker even, is playing such great defense that, they have to run back into them for the ball. Whenever it is blatant that is what they're doing. They're not trying to make a play on the ball at all. When some of those balls are actually uncatchable, but they still call the PI because you want to see the offense get closer to the touchdown, because the NFL thrives and makes its most money whenever it has a high-scoring game, which is very understandable, and I get that. But another thing in the PI category is hand fighting. Dude, people are getting called for PI when they're hand fighting, even whenever the receiver is starting it. The receiver starts the hand fighting where he's doing all of this right here, right? Because the DB is staying on his hip. He's doing all of that. And the DB putting his hand back on the hip is getting PI calls and stuff like that. I grew up in the era of hand fighting is king. Hand fighting stops, any type of catching, any type of concentration. Multiple things there. And you're calling that? So I don't really like that at all, to me personally. Also, the quarterback is able to sit in the pocket way longer than ever before in NFL history. And that is causing it to be more pass plays. And I will explain. Because a DN, a nose guard, a D tackle, what have you, a blitzer, right? They cannot kill a quarterback anymore. You used to be able to get a free lick. If you had a free rusher on the quarterback, you used to be able to light him up into where he had to hand the ball off the next few plays, right? Whenever it is no longer like that at all in the NFL. A man can sit back there with the pocket closing and he barely gets the ball out, knowing that he cannot get, smacked. Knowing that if he gets hit, they have to hit him so perfectly and in so perfect of form that if he moves the wrong way while he's falling down, we all know that the defensive player will get called for roughing the passer, right? So they know that they can stand in there longer knowing that they're not going to get abused. Now, of course, they will get hit. They will get, manhandled, of course. They're dealing with 300-pound men. Makes sense there, right? These are professional athletes at 300 pounds. So that makes complete sense there, right? But they are not scared of them anymore. Whenever it used to be, used to get guys getting nicknames like Mean Joe Green. Just the QB having that much confidence in, the defenders not being able to touch him because of his confidence, and the ref calling that roughing the passer call. He is able to stay in there more, which is causing there to be more pass plays, which is letting receivers eat more. This isn't necessarily a rule change. It is just something that I have realized over the past maybe about 4 NFL seasons here. And it is that more and more defenses are not wrapping up to where they're just shoulder tackling these days, right? Or they're trying to arm tackle guys down, right? So it's getting very, very, very easy for receivers even running backs, but more so receivers to break away from guys, for a 15-yard gain, a 10-yard gain, sometimes even a house call, simply because DBs are not wrapping up. That's just simple. For instance, they're throwing, one-on-one balls, right? And if that receiver isn't taken to the ground, more than likely his feet are gonna keep moving. And more than likely that DB isn't gonna wrap up. He's gonna try to hit him to the barrier, right? Or if he does wrap up, it's gonna be a soft wrap up like this, to where he's hugging him like that, being a little punk, and then he gets ran over, or the tackle gets broken and he looks dumb, or he looks like he can't tackle. We've seen multiple times where guys have just came in to shoulder a guy and missed the tackle. The Minnesota Miracle is a great example of that, right? So all I'm saying here is just that we need to be better at tackling on defense as a league in this National Football League. And then to touch back on what I was speaking about earlier in the video, is that every team that is good, that is trying to compete, has a good quarterback to receiver duo, or two receivers out there, so a quarterback and receiver trio, right? Every competitive team has this, because you cannot win in today's league without it. You just can't. Now, you can win with it and not much else, though. We've seen that with the Bengals from a few years ago, making it all the way to the Super Bowl, right? Obviously they had a good defense there. That's why I say not much else. But they weren't some astronomical, gonna lock down everyone on every side of the field defense, right? They're not a historical defense that we could have looked back on and say, oh, blah, 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 was doing all these crazy things, right? Definitely not. But they had a great quarterback in Burrow. They had a great receiver out there in Chase, and a complimentary guy in T, right? So all I'm saying here is just that allowed them to win. There's multiple, instances of this. The Rams, have had this for a few years now. And of course, they've had a good defense, not a great one though, right? They've had a good defense. The 49ers, shoot, even us right now. Yes, we have a good defense, but we didn't really start being a favorite or a contender until we got a quarterback and receivers who could complement the quarterback, and a quarterback who could complement the receivers, right? So it goes hand in hand here. There's multiple instances. Buffalo from, the past few years, I don't know what they're going to do now without a wide receiver one on the team, right? So, but in previous years, having Diggs out there and Gabe Davis definitely helped Josh and allowed them to win without having a name at running back. And then just a closing statement here, guys, is just that, we're in the quarterback, era, the quarterback receiver era, where we are in that era of football. The game evolves. The game evolves in every sport that there is, right? And football is no exception to that. So we're just in the era of passing the ball, deep down the field, or even short sometimes, but just getting your pass catcher the ball, right? And I know I've been talking about receivers so much here, but it is just pass catchers in general. You even need a running back that can catch the ball, tight ends that can catch the ball. You just need pass catchers in this league. You just do now. This is not a here, give your guy the ball 30 times league anymore. It just isn't. Everyone has to be a pass catcher.